Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Now let's start with the story. This trip to Lander, Wyoming was shaping up to be a disappointment. I came to experience the Rockies for the first time, checking off a bucket list before I ran out of money or luck. Now, I found myself in the bar of a fancy hotel, nursing a bourbon and Coke. The local talent was past its prime, wrinkles and all, so it looked like another night alone. A dark-haired man in a sharp business suit sat a few seats down, sipping something that looked suspiciously like fruit juice. Our eyes met. I raised my glass in greeting and took a sip. He nodded back. "What's wrong, friend? You look like someone ran over your best friend and didn't stop." He looked beyond defeated, more like spiraling into despair. I guessed his story had to be worse than mine. Slowly, he shook his head. "I have failed my king. I don't know what to do. I must return in disgrace and face the wrath of the royal family." That caught my attention. A royal family nowadays? I took a closer look. A tailored suit, a luxury watch, perfectly manicured nails. No alcohol, only fruit juice. Maybe from a place where drinking isn't welcome. 1 in 7 chance. Saudi. His eyes widened. Then he gave a quick smile and nodded. I shrugged. Lucky guess. He glanced me over. White. Older. Overweight. More salt than pepper in the hair. Dressed far too casually. Tech support in higher education doesn't pay well. If it's not too sensitive, what's got you so down? It seems impossible. My prince has ordered me to find a data repository willing to commit to a long-term partnership with the Emirates. With, how do you say, fast dynamic access. Everything is so scattered and vulnerable. I fear I'm lost. I thought about the cloud computing debate back at work. Virtualization and security were key to disaster recovery and daily operations. He'd gotten my curiosity. I asked for the details. Forgive me, but I might have some ideas. What bandwidth are you looking at? 2 gigabits per second. I'm serious. OC3 fiber or better. And storage capacity? Start with 1,000,000 terabytes and plan for growth. Whoa, that's the entire country's financial data for decades, plus engineering files, every pirated song and game combined. I see your problem. It's the scale. You're going to have to build your own. His eyes lit up like a pinball machine hitting a 3x multiplier. I felt safe to say that I had his total attention. What is the primary goal for this facility? Security and undeniable access. Is this facility for storage only, or do you require something more, such as a web presence? That would be preferred as a hot backup. I've got it. I've also got a way out of my dead-end job. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. The whole thing revolves around getting long-term leases on several communications satellite channels that can be trunked together. If they're on a single satellite, a single dish transceiver can handle it. But spanning this across multiple satellites gives the operation a safety net in case one satellite takes a hit and goes offline. The startup cost of this is going to be ferocious, but the sweet part is it's totally anonymous. You don't even need a DNS presence run raw IP addresses. For security purposes, stream all traffic under 4096-bit encryption. Only the web presence needs a DNS presence and using a separate IP space, which leaves your data backup pretty secure against a DDoS attack. The actual site can be anywhere that can see the satellites, and that's a heck of a footprint. Look, if you buy up an old ghost town with a closed mine, you've got a place to bury the equipment for undeniable security. Embed the facility in a rock mountain. Water should be available if it had a town there, and an old flooded mine shaft would make a hell of a thermal sink. If it's mountainous, then dig out a shelf, drive in semi-trailers, and pour concrete walls to entomb them. Dig another shelf reasonably close and fill it full of propane tanks. Use a propane generator with a backup or two, and set up a couple of satellite transceiver dishes. Instant repository. Put in a house for a caretaker to run it, and it's standalone for months. Schedule propane and food deliveries every 6 months, and you're good to go. His eyes were glazed and a film of sweat covered his forehead, but he was smiling. He saw a way out. He focused his eyes on me and stuck out his hand. Hassan Al-Jafari. I took his hand. Harold Falcon. I grinned at him. Looking for an IT manager/caretaker? He kept my hand within his while looking at me with speculation in his eyes. You have shown me a light when I had none. If you have a background in such, then I have no objection to putting forth your name as a party of interest. Come, my appetite has returned. Let us dine and plot. Hassan introduced me to the life of the truly privileged. I had to take a daily reality break to remind myself that this may be fun, but it was ephemeral. We turned it into a working holiday. The Four Seasons had a respectable internet pipe, and we abused it. It didn't take much research other than fine-tuning the search keys to find some truly astonishing mobile data centers. The throughput required had us hung up until we hired a consultant with a background in practical electrical engineering. We could slave 2 sets of 2 satellite transceivers into hot swappable twin channels. SGI has a containerized freight-based solution called IceCube that uses a fireplug per trailer as a cooling medium. We sent a realty agent on a foaming-at-the-mouth search for Colorado or Wyoming property that featured a closed copper mine not open face, but a driven shaft in mountainous country with reasonably close road access. Deeper mines seem to invariably flood. Extreme high-pressure water drilling can dig a chamber in a rock face so fast that it's frightening. High-volume lifting pumps along with feed pumps were planned to drive the solid bars of bone-chillingly cold water to cool 8 trailers hidden within the mountain. 3 sets of 4 LP gas-based generators would provide the 350 kW per trailer needed with acceptable redundancy. The propane tank farm was designed to be covered from aerial observation by a heavy granite overhang. It would be left open to the local environment for the refill trucks to access. A large X-shaped single-story house was laid out to be sheltered from the northern and northwestern winds by the peaks sheltering the valley. The only things betraying the sophistication of the installation were the satellite transceiver dishes, and they could be covered by camouflage nets to match the valley floor. Once Prince Farid gave his blessing to the project, the money started flowing. For less than $13 million, a state-of-the-art data center with multiple redundancy took shape in northern Colorado. At first, it was only accessible by helicopter, but as we progressed, a road was cut to a neighboring highway, and a 2,200-foot runway was chewed out of the granite comprising the roots of the mountain. A 20-room hotel was built to support the laborers and provide cover for the presence of the airstrip. I was hired as the site integrator and datacom specialist. I sweated over the manuals many a day and night and wrecked quite a few systems in a practice lab until I had it down well enough to get everything up and running. Cisco switches, SGI quad-core Xenon processors, and ISCSI farms backing each other up in a ring formed our core. The firewall locked everything down on the data farm side to a single source IP, and 2 DMZ zones supported my few outward-facing machines and the web/FTP servers under totally separate IP ranges. The LP gas farm was broken into strips quadrants by reinforced concrete walls so that no one explosion could chain fire and destroy more than a quarter of our fuel supply. Concentric rings of vibration sensors, infrared sensors, and razor wire formed our perimeter. If you couldn't be authenticated, you simply did not get in. One of Hassan's cousins found out the hard way and damned near got handed his butt. It was not an intended test, but the prince became involved. We were grateful that he came down on our side once the smoke cleared. The site residence was laid out in a large X, with the kitchen and my residence in one wing, 2 apartments for a cook and rotating security team in the next, and 2 wings were built as high-end suites for family visitors. Nothing was plated with gold, but the facilities were top of the line. A small room was reserved in each suite for prayers and had an arrow painted on the wall noting the direction of Mecca. Our cook originally came from Great Britain and insisted on a 4-oven AGA and an AGA companion installed next to it. I learned that an AGA is an always-on, always-hot stove built of solid cast iron. You just walk up to it and start cooking. The monster reminded me of the piano stoves written of in histories of Parisian bistros around the time of Escoffier. With several pantries the size of short shipping containers, a walk-in refrigerator and freezer along with a few more appliances such as a hooded charcoal grill and an electric professional baker's oven, I anticipated nothing but the best. A small library next to the kitchen was built for informal dining and as a cookbook repository. My library was keycard accessed and held a hardwired console to monitor and control the data center. All the machines were SNMP enabled, and an HP OpenView-based tool called OPSware, designed to manage data centers, pulled it all together. We could dynamically resize application farms and distribute the TCP IP requests through Cisco cluster management tools. We port bonded the server Ethernet ports to treat each pair of gigabit connectors as one 2 gig access channel. I played with OpenView several software generations before and had some breakout ideas as to how to make it sing and dance. For door security, the only place that could activate or change access to a card/lock combination was my office computer. I made sure that said office had truly impressive security. 16 rough months after we got the prince's approval, we were ready to flip the switch, save one thing: the missing encryption keys. A Shorty 707 touched down at our strip wearing DHL colors. Trust me, these guys didn't work for DHL. DHL employees don't carry anti-armor shoulder-fired rockets or crew-served weapons. A guy wearing a gray turban with a gold rope around it led a team carrying a large Pelican case. The guy in charge authenticated himself as Price Farid himself and signed for his team. I gave him my spare key card, and we were permitted into the data crypt. The first trailer was command and control. The Pelican case contained 2 RAID-based servers. One went into the head-end rack next to the border router and was wired and bolted in place. The second went into a little hidey hole I'd put together under my office in a powered safe holding 4 half-racks in a pure nitrogen environment. That's where the backups went. The second server got wired in, everything got tested for system health, and the satellite transceivers were brought online for the first time other than short-term tests. Prince Farid used a sat phone to coordinate a secure dialogue between the server farms, and that was it. We were live. The bandwidth would be maxed out for a week or so during the primary server population and site mirroring. Dude didn't have much to say, but sure as hell got things done. Hassan showed his prince to one of our guest suites and instructed our cook to get his game face on. I retreated to my apartment to monitor the system loading as box after box spun up out of idle mode and became populated with virtualized server images. The power demands stabilized well within the thresholds we had designed for. I had a few redundant power supplies fail under the load, but they were quickly replaced by slide-in modules. The OpenView map showed nothing but green and mean. I took a snooze confident that the console would make noises if anything needed attention. The gentle rumble of the water pumps lulled me to sleep. I popped up out of a sound sleep. Something was wrong. The console showed all green. Something had alerted me. What? The water pumps. Damn, that could be our single point of failure. I had to bring this up with Hassan. Luckily, we wouldn't break anything installing a redundant system, but we'd have to shut down a day or two to install the combined manifold that would keep a constant flow of coolant going to each trailer. Our engineering company was comprised of idiots. I was going to bust their chops over this. I texted Hassan what I'd thought of. He immediately called me over my voice line. We would bring up the subject with the prince over dinner. Dinner was always at least a semi-formal affair when dining with the prince unless you were of the blood and in good graces. As a Westerner, it was wear a suit or don't show. When the cook, I hesitate to use the word chef, brought out grilled lamb chunks on a bed of couscous, I could see the disappointment in the set of the prince's shoulders. He could get that anytime, anywhere in the Arabian states. I dinged my water glass and stood. Prince, would your palate prefer something more westernized? Say a grilled New York strip steak with garlic and grilled onions, creamed green beans, and a slice of cheesecake? Perhaps a Turkish coffee to finish? He smiled and gently clapped his hands. I headed back to the kitchen with the cook. I'm afraid that you made the beginner's embassy mistake. Don't feed them what they can get back home. Feed them what's good here. You have those steaks thawed we were going to have tomorrow? Fire up that grill, and I'll take care of him. You get on the creamed green beans, keep them al dente. 15 minutes later, we were serving the prince's table. Back to the kitchen. You know how to make Turkish coffee? Nope. Boil espresso grind beans with a little sugar until it foams. Pull it off the heat, stir fast, and do it again. Pull it off the heat, add 2 or 3 grains of salt, a perfume of honey, and a light dusting of lime. Yes, lime. It's pervasive there in the wind, and the drink wouldn't taste right to him without it. We served the coffee with the cheesecake course and glasses of ice water with lemon. I think we were a hit. I had the lamb, it wasn't too bad. It needed a little zing, so I used fresh lemon juice. Keeping with the no silverware tradition, I used naan to scoop up the lamb and couscous. Flatbread is flatbread. I was invited to the prince's suite later. I brought along a bar of chocolate and fresh fruit as a hosting gift. You have proved yourself to be quite the problem solver once again, Mr. Falcon. I applaud your efforts in catering to the demands of a culture so different from the one you were born to. I gave a nod of acknowledgement and replied, what the boss wants we try to get. What the boss needs we really try to get. He seemed to appreciate that. Tomorrow I will wish to tour the facility before leaving. Our whirlwind installation was impressive, yet incomplete. Certainly, Prince. Please have your staff inform the cook as to what you wish to break your fast, and when. He is an accomplished baker. With that I was handed out of the suite. Morning prayers were followed by a fresh croissant and French press coffee. The tour began then with my suite. The price observed everything, obviously looking things over with an eye towards security. All the windows were 8-inch slits. Once in my office I asked him to close the door. His eyes widened at the weight. 3 inches of steel will do that. Rather than open the vault, which requires cycling the air from pure nitrogen, I turned on the lights and camera. I described what he was seeing. This is the site hot backup. All machine configurations and server images are backed up here as well as the reserve encryption server. All of this is connected through fiber directly to the data crypt. I turned on the HP OpenView monitor and described what the screen showed, what could be determined, and what could be done from the console. He nodded his head as he was familiar with the software, having it in use at his primary data center. It eases my mind that we both came up with the same management solution. I described the encrypted data streams between my office and the crypt, as well as the security steps taken to ensure that the keycard access was secure. We proceeded to the server farm where the individual trailers were visited. The foundations, Power, coolant, and data connections were inspected. We had run armored fiber everywhere. It doesn't cost all that much more than plenum fiber and is much better terminated. We discussed the redundancy policies. He was not amused when we discussed the lack of redundancy in the cooling subsystem. Next came the generator and fuel bays. 4 long bays of LP gas tanks marched into the dark of the mountain, each bay holding 64 2,000-pound tanks. A side room contained the automated pumping controls to move the LP gas from tank to tank so that the empties could be refilled properly. A manual relay control board covered one wall that could override a fried automated system. The controls for cutoff valves were prominently labeled in case of explosion or a breach in the pipes. This the engineers had done properly. Again, this was remotely controllable from my office. Come the dead of winter, the only reason to open the crypt was to change out parts that had gone out of spec or had stopped working, such as a hard drive, RAM, or a power supply. We returned to my office and sat. Well, Mr. Falcon, it seems that you have worked your way out of a job. This is well enough set up to manage from the Emirates, making your job superfluous. I crossed my arms and sat back with a slight smile on my face. Oh, politics rears its ugly head. Which political hack or drooling imbecile of an in-law will you entrust with your nation's economy? In one fell swoop, the entire installation could be rendered vulnerable to outside attack or control one slight policy, change one published IP address. Well, that will be your problem, not mine. I assume that you'll insist that I sign a non-disclosure agreement. In return, I insist that I will be held harmless for anything that occurs once I turn over control of the site. He seemed quite angry as I turned from him to pull up and print a non-disclosure contract and a hold harmless agreement from the internet. I placed them before him on the desk, sat back, and folded my hands before me, expressionless. He met my gaze curiously. You seem to have expected this turn of events. He was a powerful man. I could not bait him with impunity. It has been noted before that what one culture regards as treachery is simply regarded as the accepted way of doing business in another. Long ago, I convinced myself that this may be one of the outcomes of this job. It does no good to rail against it as you hold all the cards. I have left no triggers, no back doors, no timed events queued up, and there are no deadman programs. I have dealt honestly with you and in good faith. If you would sign the documents before you, I shall countersign, gather my possessions, and return my keycard at the gate. One hopes that you will be gracious enough to provide transport to the nearest town. He slowly reached for a pen and began signing the documents. I took a sheet from the printer and started writing out the system logins and passwords, noting what went to which system or software package. As he finished, I signed the documents with my own pen, taking a copy for myself. I rose and turned towards the door, intending to pack and leave. He remained seated. Mr. Falcon, you shame me. No, Prince. Your business practices and culture shame you. You have been brought up to hold the welfare of your family above all else. As in all things, there are costs to what we do. Your imam will understand and aid you in gaining wisdom in this matter. I left a sober prince of the realm behind me as I closed the door to my office for the last time. After packing, our cook fed me a fine lunch. One of the guards agreed to drive me into town for $50. I left without looking back. I found an inexpensive hotel with an internet feed that evening. I checked my account balance. It had grown by $250,000. The prince seemed to be a man of honor and a gracious paymaster despite the way we parted. In the morning, I typed up my resume and hit the yellow pages for a local car dealership. Northwestern Colorado doesn't have many towns of any great size, but if there's a town, there's usually a car dealership there. I found a used Ford F-250 pickup in decent shape. Paying cash kept the price down. I took it to a repair place to have the fluids changed. The transmission, engine, and brakes were inspected, tires replaced, and front end aligned. It was ready 3 days later. I loaded my gear and took off for Denver and points south. I took my time getting where I was going. There was no rush, no timetable. After dealing with the madness of Denver traffic, I stopped in Pueblo for a few days to get organized and take stock of what I had, where I was going, and where I wanted to be when I got there, if you know what I mean. This didn't look like a bad place to settle. I found some green space near Pueblo Mountain Park, 25 miles or so southwest of Pueblo. There weren't any for sale signs around, but a local broker pointed me towards a 400-acre parcel of mostly up and down with a few creeks and flat spaces for around $16 an acre. The road I had graded and cost some, and the well cost more. 220 volts came in from the county road, and I got enough signal to keep my cell phone happy. Nothing fancy like 3G, but I had signal. Data was another issue. I still had the codes to piggyback off the Emirates satellite channels, but I didn't want to do it. I leased a few hundred kbps from a service and built my own transceiver dish installation from mostly surplus parts. The house I ended up building nestled up against the south side of a granite outcrop. It was a one-story ranch with an attached two-car garage, all on one nice thick flat slab of concrete. The kitchen wasn't as sumptuous as the one I had built before, but it was nice enough. I duplicated the indoor charcoal grill and AGA companion that the showplace kitchen featured. I took a pass on the huge AGA restaurant special. I had an alcove built into the west end of the house that a semi could get to and dump off a small containerized freight module. That was my larder. I pumped warm dry air into it during the winter so the cans and bottles wouldn't freeze. I figured on 8 to 14 feet of snow a year, so the electric line wasn't considered a trusted resource. A small generator was put in that worked off the same 2,000-pound LP gas tank that the heater did. Using 12-volt bulbs around the place and 12-volt fans where I really needed a fan kept the generator demand to a minimum. I replaced the switching power supply of my desktop computer with a dedicated, well-regulated 5V/12V supply running off the house 12V bus. I shopped my brag sheet around Pueblo. I even managed to drop off a copy at the military base. I hit everywhere except the school district. I knew from experience what crappy paymaster school districts were despite their desperate need for expertise. What with the $90,000 I'd saved up during the construction of the data haven and the $250,000 I'd been given as a separation bonus, I was doing pretty good. I had spent about $85,000. I had no loans outstanding. My periodic costs were taxes, electricity, internet, LP gas, and car insurance. I bought tire chains for the F-250 and a used end loader for snow removal. I stored it in the second garage bay. The weather was quickly turning, and from what I understood, blizzards coming out of nowhere were not uncommon. I made a couple trips to Pueblo to stock up on cold weather gear, paperbacks, food, and booze. It was time to hunker down for winter. One of my projects that I wanted to quickly get out of the way was to buy a decent computer with a big hard drive, install MediaWiki on it, and load it up with a copy of Wikipedia. The download time was going to kill me unless I did it in town, where there was a data pipe I could beg/borrow/steal/rent. A 2 terabyte Buffalo box gave me transportable data storage. I downloaded a dictionary and a thesaurus. It took a while to download all 5 Debian DVDs that I wanted to use as an OS, but after a day I had them. PHP and MySQL were familiar enemies. I settled down to writing a book or a long article about building a data center in the middle of nowhere. I anonymized it so that it would sell to a magazine or two without violating my contract. It sold. SGI bought it as a testimonial and product proof of concept for permanent deployment of their flagship product. HP flogged it to a couple of high-end industry trade magazines because it highlighted their management software. I more than made up for my operating costs that winter. Working under several pseudonyms, I wrote articles about using encryption both for management and secure data transfer in and out of data centers, and one on how to plan multiple levels of redundancy into a no-fail data center. I wrote an article about data center security, but left it so nebulous that it read like a tract on concentric rings of security around a military base. I didn't want to give anyone any pointers as to how to give the prints problems if they put all the articles together. Pursuing several European publishers, I sent out a paper on concealing high-volume data transmissions using conventional ports and unpublished IP addresses. Knock-knock strategies were bandwidth limited by nature and designed for connectionless communications. Using conventional ports tends to anonymize the traffic as it blends in with similar traffic. Packets utilizing unconventional ports can easily be filtered for and subjected to pattern analysis. I bought a Japanese bath and a walk-in refrigerator with the proceeds from that one. While powering through the logic of a nasty paper describing the discovery of ghost or hidden data repositories through global traffic hop and timing analysis versus comparing signal signatures on parallel yet simultaneous global data trunks, I received a visitor. A little red-haired fellow named Jameson from the NSA stopped by for a visit. It seemed that they closely tracked portable data centers and had no problem with what I participated in building. Their concern was with the content of the papers I'd been generating. It seems that I was touching upon things deemed to be national secrets, or at a minimum sensitive data. How did you come to write these? What gave you the keys to the concepts involved? Simple. HP OpenView has hooks for various SNMP triggers and remote sniffers. If you open up the backend for C program integration, you have a great test bed for signal analysis, data filtering and reduction, as well as presentation. The expression on his face showed that he'd not given OpenView the attention it deserved. With satellite core monitoring access, even more can be done. Here, I handed him a copy of the paper I was working on. Treat the planet as a system. With traffic analysis sensors, in every satellite you can access, just clone the data to a downlink. The satellites don't have enough processing power to do any analysis, and the feeds have to be coordinated. Just make sure the time markers are present. Ignoring the submerged fiber and putting data feeds in the Hong Kong, Hawaii, Los Angeles, New York, and Seattle you use should give you enough data to pull significant traffic intelligence from international sources. Mustn't forget the Florida links to the data havens and offshore banks in the Gulf, either. Follow the money, This is not for real-time analysis. More data points fill in the texture of the model. He read the paper and stared at me. You've done an end run around us, fellow. We've been going about this the hard way. I'll tell you what, finish the paper. Write a précis on the SNMP to see linkage and flesh out a data analysis block, and we'll hand you a 7-figure check that the IRS will ignore. The better the analysis block or blocks, the bigger the check. We shook hands. I had work to do. I ended up calling Dr. Jameson a couple of months later to see if I could borrow a copy of HP OpenView for a test integration. I got a dedicated computer workstation, a copy of the data passing through a digital comm sat for 24 hours, and a copy of the data flow of the traffic running through Denver for the same 24 hours to use as a test. My screen didn't have enough resolution to show what I'd found at 48x. The NSA was happy. I got a $4.25 million check and had to sign my life away. I had to give up the OpenView too, damned it. I did manage to cadge a secure pass naming me as a NSA contractor. I had ideas festering in my head that demanded an audience. I bought my own copy of HP OpenView and a Sun Microsystems black box half-container portable data center. It went into a data center near Pueblo where they could wire it into their fiber bus and provide it with redundant power and cooling. I populated it with 3 4-petabyte SANs and 2 racks of SGI double quad-core Xenon 3.00 GHz processor-based heavy-duty analysis machines. This quickly grew to become a Beowulf cluster. I paid for a bundle of fiber to be run the 35 miles from the data center to the AT&T crypt to my pop at the rear of my house. A feeder split off to Beulah to give the school district 2 gigabytes of fiber. What the hell, I could afford it. And it made a nice tax write-off for my yearly investment profits. I encrypted the hell out of everything I touched. I started populating one of the SANs with prime numbers. Once I achieved a full matrix of 2-bit primes, I began to create a cross matrix of 4-bit keys. Then I used 1-bit primes to create 2-bit keys, then 512-bit primes to create 1024-bit keys. I was processing the raw data to brute force certain bit strengths of digital keys. This was a sparse matrix of all available solutions, yet most software would take this avenue to create their key spaces. With Dr. Jameson's blessing, I got access to copies of some equatorial satellite feeds and all available underwater fiber nets coming out of Grover Beach, California, New York/NJ, and South Florida. I wanted to selectively strip the offshore banks. It took several months to flesh out the data fabric before I had a dependable map of how money flowed into and out of the Gulf havens. Using the standard RSA algorithms deemed acceptable by the banking industry, I sent the servers to cracking the encrypted banking data transactions. I got about one a week or so. After attempting to identify the party owning the account, I determined whether or not to strip its assets. If the source IP began in South America, Washington, D.C., or Virginia, I had no compunctions against leaving 39 cents in each account. If the account came from a belligerent Islamic or Jewish country, I left 2 cents in the account. At first, I didn't know what the hell to do with the money. I decided to deposit into quite a few Swiss bank accounts after converting the dollars, euros, francs, and whatever into gold. I bought some more property, some nice leather furniture, and expanded my library. I leased my own satellite data channel. After consulting with the CIA and State Department, I began investing in Africa, creating jobs, and building infrastructure. Africa could not feed itself. Starving people don't care about government when their children are dying. I had thousands of wells dug. I bought into Monsanto just to close them down. I converted the company into a non-profit charity providing feed and seed to Africa. I lost one hell of a lot of money doing it, but I didn't care. Frankenfood was doomed. We gave away corn, wheat, barley, and millet by the kiloton. When they started to harvest the fields, the trucks were there to take the grain to market. Warlords damned near killed the whole thing. The CIA arranged for pallets of weapons and ammunitions purportedly purchased for the defense of the farmers to be diverted by the warlords. They had been liberally dusted with Ebola. It was a savage yet short-lived outbreak. Southeast Africa was finally feeding itself. I was emotionally burned out and running out of money fast. Most of the Gulf havens had gone under due to mismanagement. A whole new generation of banking-based theft had matured and hung out their shingles in Hong Kong. That was outside of my data sphere. I left that for Jameson's crowd to infiltrate, drain, and decimate. I'd had enough. I had $1.25 tons of gold left out of the trillions I'd garnered, as well as my initial payout by the NSA. I had a 50-kilogram bar of gold delivered to me through a Canadian branch of a major Swiss bank. I left it on a glass-covered bookshelf to look at once in a while to remind me how fickle wealth truly is. I took my time writing up a précis of my operation for the NSA so that they could learn from my mistakes as well as my successes. I shut down my probes and turned the operation into a co-location facility, then leased it out to a data management company. It made me an annuity for many years. Mismanagement finally drove it under, and I sold it to Emporg as a local hosting site. It made me scads of money until the day I sold it. Sigh. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I was losing body weight due to age. I tried to stay active, but nothing much kept my attention. After proving my bona fides with the University of Colorado Boulder, I signed up to teach 2 graduate-level classes certified ethical hacking, analyzing large systems, and implementation and management of a software control system of scalable data centers. After nearly strangling the department head, I got smart. I simply handed him a folder containing the details of his investment portfolio. After a couple of years, I told him the story of the Gulf offshore bank collapse and let him stroke a 50 kilograms bar of gold. I had small but intelligent classes that knew enough to ask questions. I noted the presence of several military personnel in the former class and several Washington and Oregon state transfers attending the latter class. Real-world examples of successes and failures of this magnitude seemed to command the attention of people responsible for keeping our house of cards from collapsing. Someone once said that if engineers designed houses and cities the way programmers designed software, the first woodpecker that came around would destroy civilization. You'll get no arguments out of me. Every 6 months, I had the LP tank refilled and 3 cords of split, dried hardwood delivered to the house. I threw a red meat party the first weekend of every month for the professors and grad students of the IT department. One July evening, I recognized a familiar face. He was a swarthy fellow in an impeccable Italian suit. His temples had begun to silver. He held a glass of a nice Shiraz, which he was obviously enjoying. Prince Farid, welcome to my home. May you feel comfortable here. Thank you for your gracious welcome. I bring a guesting gift and anticipate nothing in return. He handed me a small handmade wooden box about 2 inches on a side. I bowed in acceptance of the gift and opened it. I sipped air in appreciation. It was an extremely dark pigeon's egg ruby, large enough to be used as the final decoration on a sword hilt. It was truly a royal gift. I thank you for your remarkable gift and wait with all attention to hear why you feel it proper to present to me such a handsome and rare specimen. Soon, as your guests then, we shall speak. To say that I was curious would be an understatement. As the sun set, most of my guests bid their adieu. The prince sat outside near the fire pit relaxing with a brandy. I drew a bourbon and ice for myself and joined him in appreciating the coming dark. I have learned that your skills and understanding far outstripped my expectations over the months and years since we parted. I have come to thank you for not stripping us of our assets, as you clearly could have had you harbored any bitterness towards my family. The king has been made aware of your gracious behavior that has rarely been noted between competing branches of our family, much less from far on. Oh, outsiders. Yes, we parted as civilly as we could under the circumstances. I turned my face away and wished you peace. No more should be said. He looked uncomfortable at my last comment. I have been commanded by my king to gift you that which only a king may present. He made a come-hither motion towards the doorway. A tall, powerfully built woman approached. She seemed to be in her early 30s, had a long golden braid of hair and deep blue eyes. She moved easily and gracefully. A small smile graced her classical features. My king wishes you to help him with a problem. Kira has been with my king's household for 7 years, and there is nothing but strife among his other wives. Their jealousies poison the peace of the house. He requests that you take her as a housekeeper and cook. I laughed, genuinely laughed. Harold the troubleshooter strikes again. I accept your king's gift with sincere gratitude. I hope Kira finds the peaceful calm of the mountain valley to her liking. As for how this all unfolds, you have a saying, Inshallah, as fate wills. It was clear the prince was relieved that I had helped him out of a difficult situation with his king. He smiled warmly as he gently guided Kira toward me. I took her hand and drew her close. Welcome, Kira. We shall begin arranging your quarters as soon as possible. For now, be welcome in my house. Let's get you set up in the guest bedroom. It seemed that she understood English, but was not practiced in its use. I preceded them back into the house and down the corridor to the guest bedroom I'd had built, but was rarely occupied. It was quite Spartan, resembling a decent hotel room. She had gathered up a suitcase and an overnight case as she followed me. Her face was inscrutable as she took in the room. This will be yours until we can have a suite or apartment built for you. The key to the door is in the bedside stand. The bathroom is there, pointing towards a door, and I'll show you the rest of the house in the morning. I turned to the prince with a grin. Here I wished you peace, yet you turned my household on its ear. One hopes that this has been done with good intent, for things seemed to come back 3 times upon the instigator. He smiled and left. I smiled at Kira. Are you hungry? Her low voice replied, yes, please. I have not eaten since our landing in New York. I led her to the kitchen, where I removed one of the steaks that had been cooked yet not eaten from the refrigerator. I sliced it thinly and plated it up with bread, cheese, and olives. Thinking about what she'd been eating the past several years, I passed up most condiments for olive oil. I sat her at the kitchen table with the plate of food and a glass of water. You must ask for what you wish. I made this up as a simple dish for you from what I knew we had available. Tomorrow we'll discuss what you like to eat and go shopping, both for clothing as well as food. We'll set you up with an account for incidentals and get you a debit card as well as a phone. Are you following me? Burstahin Sie? A quick nod was followed by a smile. Fine. Let's get you to bed. You must have had a very long day. I escorted her to her room and retired to mine. What a hell of a day. I awoke as usual at 6. Dressed against the morning chill, I took my first coffee of the day to the patio with a pad of paper and a pen. Patting myself down, I was relieved that I had my cell phone, keys, and wallet. A sketch slowly took place before me as I sipped my coffee. The house footprint suggested a connected apartment jutting out from the side of the house furthest from the garages and closest to the larder, partially enclosing the patio. Its position would place the LP gas tank between the apartment and the containerized larder. It would maximize the sunshine available from the southern exposure and connect directly with the kitchen. The electric wall ovens displaced by the doorway could easily be fitted into the island, which served as an informal dining area. A large lounge, bedroom, and bathroom would constitute the apartment, and we would share the kitchen. It would require some rock removal and the pouring of a new section of slab floor, but shelter for an automobile for her was mandatory. Vehicles don't like being outside at night in the Colorado Rockies. We had several months to work with before the snows were expected. I left a message with my architect's machine requesting a meeting as soon as possible. Then I began a checklist to find out what I was getting into. Soon my house guest sat beside me with a cup of her own. I'm surprised that you're up this early with all the changes in time zones you've gone through. I'm fine. I seem to wake in the morning no matter where I am. I'll go to bed early for a few days and be all caught up. Wonderful. Would you answer some questions for me? I would like to know something about you. Certainly. What is your milk tongue and what languages do you know? I am native Danish and am comfortable in English, German, French, and Italian. I have some Spanish. Very nice. Are you comfortable in the kitchen? Are there any specific cuisines which you like to cook? Danish cooking involves much fish, and I am happy cooking that. I enjoy most Northern European dishes and many Italian dishes. I can bake breads, pies, rolls, and muffins, but not much past that. For several years I have eaten and probably can reproduce many Persian dishes. All right. I'll show you how to make flatbread and tortillas. Some Mexican dishes are savory and relatively easy to make. Do you have any objection to being my cook and house cleaner? The place isn't very large, and you will have much time to yourself. I have a large internet pipe and buy books with great abandon. Oh no, no objection at all. Living here will get me out of a very bad situation. Good. First let's give you a tour of the house, then go to town for some shopping. We need to get you a working green card and a car as well as make arrangements at the bank. We started with tearing apart the kitchen. I described where I planned to build her apartment and how the ovens would move into the island for the door to be opened in the wall. The walk-ins and larder seemed to impress her for such a small house. I described how long winters could be. I pointed out the 12-volt lights and fans. All the cooking appliances except for the wall ovens were gas-fired and could be used without electricity. The kitchen shared space with the living room, which was quite comfortable. Just down the hall lay the library with many books, a small museum, and my computers. Across the hall was the guest suite. Next came a small bathroom, and then a storage room. Finally came the master bedroom suite. That morning, I had made plans to add another room behind the garage for a sauna and to move the Japanese bath from the master suite bath to the communal bathroom. It would feel wonderful to use once the snow started falling. I wasn't worried about construction costs. I still had about $38 million in the bank. Can you drive a car? I'm a bit out of practice, but yes, I can both standard and automatic. Good. We're going to get you a vehicle so that we have enough room to bring home all your new clothes. She looked at me as if I had sprouted horns. I didn't want to make her feel put out, so we came away from the Chevy dealer with 2 new Silverado King Cab pickups, hers in red and mine in blue. I had traded in my old beast. Next stop, Carson Peary Scott. I watched her shop for a bit, then found a coffee shop and waited. I noticed that she paid careful attention to seams, buttonholes, and cuffs. Next stop, Nordstrom's. I found a bookstore and left her to it. Next stop, JCPenney's. I bought a few shirts, fresh underwear, and a pair of swimming trunks as well. I knew we'd need coolers to get cold food home, so I bought a couple. I let her pick out her own cell phone. I had them put a buttload of minutes on it. Finally, We stopped for food. Albertsons, then King Soopers. When the truck beds were packed pretty well, we made one final stop for meat at Frank's Meat Market. We picked up hot fried chicken for dinner and headed home. I led so that she could learn the route without stressing out too much. I backed into the garage first for unloading, then pulled out so she could do the same. I kept a cart with big solid tires in the garage so that I wouldn't bounce stuff off the walls as I headed for the kitchen after shopping. We got good use of it that day. We put away what had to be refrigerated or frozen, then stopped for a break. Happy? She nodded like crazy and grinned. Good. Now you've got to find a place to put away all the stuff you just bought. It didn't faze her in the slightest. She disappeared to organize things. I called my bank and started proceedings to get her an account with a debit card. We need to get her signature on her card. Next, I called the Denver Department of Immigration and Naturalization. I described what happened and gave them my contacts with the State Department and NSA, dated though they were. They promised to get back to me within 24 hours. Color me impressed. Next, I wanted to know what formal education my new cook/housemaid/maid had going for her. I was also concerned about her ability to defend herself. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I had Tai Chi classes in the morning. I invited her to come along in the morning. I put away the rest of the groceries and figured out dinner. Thin pancakes, sour cream, and lingonberry jelly. That would be as close to Danish as I knew how to cook. I set out the ingredients for potato pancakes with applesauce and sour cream for breakfast as well. I had discovered over a misspent life that some dishes delivered much more than their preparation would suggest. Crispy potato pancakes was one such dish. I had fond hopes of seducing this blonde beauty into comfort around me with a sane environment, enough responsibility to stretch out a bit, the opportunity to learn and grow, and more than a little comfort food. We'd see how things turned out. After breakfast and Tai Chi, we visited a large furniture store. She fell in love with a heavy cherry bedroom set featuring a sleigh bed. I bought it for her without a quibble. Her hug and kiss were well worth the money. We had another heart-to-heart over sandwiches for lunch. Have you any time at university? Some, in accounting. I did not enjoy it. Truly. What would you enjoy? Truly? Cooking school and lessons to be a dietitian. Perhaps nursing. Can you defend yourself? She quirked her lips. Better than you, I'll wager. What forms? Firearms. Staff. Knife. What? Yes. Don't keep me guessing. At my age, the suspense might just be too much. Her laughter was like music. My Kira had been trained as a bodyguard. Many layers were lifted from my heart. I bought her an oak bow staff, several fighting and throwing knives that she approved of, and a pair of 10mm combat automatics. I tried to sway her to revolvers, but she was adamant. We agreed to spend some time each Saturday morning at my rifle range exercising H&K combat rifles and my Savage FP-110 sniper rifles. She shot from prone while I had to use the bench. We shot 30.06 and 7mm Remington Magnum. She put me to shame, but it was fun. I showed her my cut-a-playing card in half trick. She spent Sunday afternoons at a dojo or a coin to keep her skills honed. A small gym was added to the bathing room. We both enjoyed Tai Chi and continued its practice. Her apartment was finally ready. It was furnished beautifully. The sauna and bathing room was ready as well. I took the coward's way out and wore my bathing trunks. She wore a bikini that gave me a new appreciation for the female form. We relaxed together. Harold, I nearly had a heart attack today. How so? I found a brick of gold in the library about as heavy as I am. Oh yes. My reminder of what once was. Did you ever hear about what happened to the Gulf tax havens? I spun a little tale of data analysis, perfidy, and corruption. I didn't lie much. And that's why I keep a map of Africa on the wall of the library. Wow. And you never went back for more? Nope. Most don't, but I took my promise to be a certified ethical hacker to heart. The damage I could do would be global in scale, but with what I taught the NSA, all my actions could be traced back to me. If I intended a final gesture, I could force a Pyrrhic victory over any nation or group of nations, but that isn't what defines me. I teach well-respected courses at the university in Pueblo every school year and attempt to instill a rational moral structure into those I teach. Do you know the difference between ethics and morals? I believe so, but I want to hear your interpretation. Ethics are mutable and can vary with the situation one finds oneself in. Morals reflect your heart and what you're willing to see in the mirror each morning. The king made a moral decision to gift you to me to avoid having to dispose of you, which would probably involve your death. She drew into herself and signed, acknowledging my analysis. I hugged her to me. Are you dead yet? Laughter greeted my ears. Fall came upon us and the beginning of the semester. Kira left for school when I did her to learn, me to teach. A lesson for you: if you teach properly, you learn something each day in the classroom. Teaching is the best way to truly master a subject. I was fast approaching 70. The mind was sharp, yet the body was meh. I read much of the rise of robot farms generated by rootkits. The people at the NSA should have been on this. This could easily be funded or controlled by hostile governments. I got back into business. I activated the few probes that hadn't been destroyed through software security upgrades. Hinsdale, Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, Denver, Colorado, Dallas-Fort Worth, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Atlanta still replied through my AT&T contacts. Several of the major botnets seem to be controlled by structured messages posted on national and international IM sites, totally automated. The botnets worked in a hierarchical fashion. The majors control the captains, which control the sergeants, which control the grunts. In this fashion, a single controlling node could not be overwhelmed or affect the results of the entire project through one failure. I began isolating the input routes to specific mailboxes and posting my own command messages. I backtraced the messages that I'd frozen out and drove them to their knees. We had banks, embassies, and colleges that were fingered. We gave them the finger. With the help of the State Department, our guilty parties were permanently frozen out of the international trunks. Their IPs were declared PNG, persona non grata. Get the hell out of Dodge. I resurrected my old ghost farm detector to make sure we were getting the guilty parties. In some cases, we passed through the middlemen and locked onto the scumsuckers responsible. The NSA sent me a nice check, even though the work wasn't solicited. I elected to teach a new class on the detection and neutralization of botnets. I found it to be quite popular. I found myself napping during the afternoons. My appetite declined. I had ceased teaching as I could no longer dependably get to the classrooms on time. Kira took care of me, and all was right with the world. I was teaching Kira how to be a certified ethical hacker. The expressions on her face as we covered subject after subject were more valuable than gold. A dark-haired young lady came to stay with us. Her name was Hallie. It seemed that Kira doubted her ability to care for me as she wished as time went on. She requested and received an understudy from the prince's retinue. Kira took to sleeping with me while Hallie took over the cook's apartment. I found myself grateful for her holding me in bed. Whenever I woke during the night, I found her there. I soon called her wife in our day-to-day conversations. It gave us both much satisfaction. Kira has left us. She passed in her sleep. I never wished to live longer than her. She truly had become my wife as time passed. There was an empty place in myself. I felt helpless, rudderless. I spent the weeks and months reading and writing. The scumsuckers. The stupid, self-serving, theocratic scumsuckers. The Israelis nuked everything east of the River Jordan by 800 miles with dirty nuclear weapons. The United States, UN, and European Union were paralyzed due to Israeli infiltration of their political machines over the past 40-plus years. All the OPEC nations are a radioactive wasteland. What hasn't died will die soon. The tone of the radio broadcasts coming out of Tel Aviv are full of exultation, pride, vindication. This shall be my swan song. Few will know how it will happen, yet it will serve as a brutal reminder of to what goes around comes around. My probes have identified several repositories in Russia and Eastern Germany with peculiar signatures. I expect them to be nuclear weapon deployment sites. I have been repopulating my encryption key SANs customized to the key lengths exhibited by the traffic I've intercepted. Soon I'll be able to synthesize the launching orders for MIRVs from 37 sites. Changing the targeting coordinates from Central Europe, Sweden, Finland, and Great Britain to just west of the Jordan River really wasn't that hard. I didn't wait for a holiday. I didn't wait for a holy day. It was a Tuesday. I called it the Day of Thunder. Every SNMP-enabled radar station in the Eastern Med was taken offline before the blasts. They had no warning. Well, neither did the Arabs. I expect them to come for me soon. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Am I a hero? Am I a mass-murdering villain? Either way, I've followed my morals. You live and die by what you're willing to do. I wish to point out so did they. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.